Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Lethal Weapon as well as the latest episode of Blindspot. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you don't want to listen to, then you can always look in the description down below. I include the time of when I start talking about each of the respective shows that I'm talking in this particular episode. For example, if you don't want to hear what I have to say about this week's episode of Lethal Weapon, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Blindspot. But starting off with Lethal Weapon, this week's episode, a lot of stuff went down. First, you had the whole situation with Roger's heart condition. I mean, we ended up finding out later on that he had a pacemaker issue, but that didn't come up till later. But the fact is that obviously it came up a little earlier in the episode, but he kind of played it down, in front of Trish and RJ. But then when it came to, they were chasing the bad guy when it came to when he was with Riggs, and then it started hitting up big time. And instead of rather going after the bad guy, Riggs took him to the hospital, took him to the doctor, he got checked out. And then you had Roger being like, hey, don't tell anybody, especially Trish. Because to him, it was something interesting too, because Roger is a very prideful person. He said, it took only till now for everyone to stop looking at me, for everyone in the department to kind of forget the fact is I had a heart attack. I don't want them to look at me like I'm some fragile old man type of situation. I want them to see hey, I'm a good detective. I can still do my job. I don't want them to look at me that way. They have to be on pins and needles. Roger, you shouldn't do this. Let us handle this type of situation. So, and that's because the thing is, you also have to think about the fact that that's a little much for him to be like, yo, Riggs, I need you to keep the secret from me, especially when it came to Trish. But it's just because, so many things played out. The fact of the matter is, Riggs kept trying repeatedly to get Roger, trying to get Roger to stay behind so that he doesn't get too worked up and everything. They end up finding out they're suspect in this whole situation because basically in the car lot, because I love that opening, that basically the cop that's supposed to be watching the car lot, it's where they dump evidence cars and stuff like that, the police lot, he's trying to, I don't know how to phrase it properly without sounding skeezy. Him and his, I would assume, significant other or lady of interest, I guess, are, doing their thing. And then all of a sudden, they see someone is trying to break into a car. He pulls out his gun, firing back and forth. Oh my God, the person gets away. And then she's like, oh my God, baby, that's so hot. Let's go. He's like, all right, but I should probably report this, but don't worry. I guess all I would need is 5 minutes. And then she was like, 5 minutes? Okay. She's like, okay, bye. It's like, wait, what if that guy's still out there? She's like, I don't have to worry. I'll be fine on my own because both of you can't shoot worth anything. And it's like, what? It's got mad props to her because she walked away from that situation. It's she kept her calm and cool across all of this, exchanging fire, and then you wanted to have sex afterwards, but then you're like, no, because he talking about some 5 minutes. You're like, no, this ain't even worth it. And so you left it. It's she's a pretty tough lady. But the whole situation was because the car basically had drugs in it, and it was connected to this, drug dude, Angelo, but the DNA from the blood and stuff like that came back and it was saying that it was Dino's, but it was kind of corrupted, so they couldn't really use it. But it turns out that Dino is actually Trish's client as well as a mentor. Basically, essentially Trish and Dino have a relationship in the sense of she helped Dino kind of get his life back in order. When he got out of jail, she helped put him on the right path. She was a mentor to him. He took care of his little brother Jerry. They kind of only had each other. So for him, he took care of Jerry not like a little brother, but almost like a son. And I love the fact is that we got to see a different side of Trish. The moment Trish came in and she was like, what the hell are you two doing? It's oh, what do you mean? It's yeah, that's my client. Your client and mentor, huh? He's and then Roger's oh yeah, remember, right? I told you that Dino kind of seemed familiar for some reason. And then Trish just kind of was ripping into them. And the fact is that he's well, your client pulled a gun on me and everything. And she's oh yeah, I'm sure that was it. I read that little police report of yours, and just kind of looking him down. And both of them yeah, Trish, yeah, you look looking good. It's yeah, you're just even with all that small frame and everything, you got such a menacing force behind you. Not exactly what they're saying, but essentially. And she's she's I'm about to go in there. I want you to cut off the mic and everything while I talk to my client. And then like Riggs got pissed at him and he's like, Roger, at least one of us has to start listening. One of us is supposed to be listening at all times. It's usually supposed to be you. You know I don't listen all the time. It's like, this is your fault. And he's walking away. And then you hear Trish yelling like, turn off the mic, and then you just see Roger stammering. And then like he's talking to the department. Guys, we are up against the greatest thing that we've ever gone up against. My wife. We need to watch out for Trisha Murtaugh. And they're like, even Bailey's like, yo, Roger, aren't you being a little crazy about this? And she's like, you acted like she's just pure evil. And he's like, I've gone up against evil people like across this job, but none of them scare me like she does. And even Riggs is like, she scares me too. Just lady that small, and she frightens me. It's like, yo, if Riggs, the man who does crazy stuff all the time, is scared, then you know she's not to be trifled with. And like, that was an interesting thing about this episode too, is we saw that side of Trish. We've never seen lawyer Trish, and she really kicked it. Especially, I think she even kicked it up even more because it was Dino that she was being protective of, and kind of almost her motherly instincts kind of kicked in. So I'm thinking that played a part. But like, you have Riggs getting all like, oh man, this is gonna be easy or whatever, in a kind of deposition or whatever. And then you have like Roger being like, Riggs, you're an idiot. Like, cause Trish is being all nice. It's like, oh, this is just the formality. Riggs, are you coming over afterwards? And he's like, don't worry, Trish, I'm gonna be over. And Roger's looking at him like, you're just stupid, aren't you? And he's just like, whatever. Goes in, she rips him apart like on everything that he did wrong, blah, 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 blah. And then finally comes down to it. It's like, where was your partner? Yeah, he was back off doing somewhere. I'm going to ask you again, you're obviously lying. Now tell me the truth. Where was your partner? She's like, all right, Trish, he had heart problems. And then like, I was concerned about his health. And then Roger got up and walked away. And then Trish was like, is there anything else? And he's like, well, Trish, I guess I'm not coming over to dinner. And it's such a sad situation because it was like, now he felt like, the Murtaughs were pissed at him. It's like, because he cares about them because they're like his, like the doc has always been saying, like they're his only attachment to the outside world, to life. And it's like, he feels like his partner's going to be pissed at him because the truth came out. He knows Trish is going to be pissed at him because Riggs didn't tell her immediately that he kept this from her too. Plus the whole situation with Dino doesn't help. Because an interesting thing in this episode too is that Riggs' relationship, like it wasn't even just that relationship, his relationship with the doc got kind of messed with too. Because in this episode, obviously, like at the beginning, he's washing his hands and he drops his ring down the disposal. And do you see that look on his face? Like he's so desperate to get it. Like he's cutting up his hands on stuff in the disposal. And he finally gets it back and he's just like so happy about it. Like he puts it back on his finger. And then like she's like, oh, she looks at it, his hands like, oh, you got another bar fight. He's like, and he tells her the truth surprisingly about what happened. And then like she's like, oh, well, what would have happened if you lost the ring? And he was like, what do you mean? Like I would have been very unhappy. She's like, but maybe losing it would be a good thing. He's like, oh, you want me? Oh, you're saying I should forget about Miranda? She's like, in no shape or form am I saying that. But maybe losing the ring would be a good sign of you moving on. He's like, yeah, glad we had this talk, Doc. Like always, it's a pleasure, and walks away. And she's like, I didn't mean to piss you off, Riggs. And he's like, kind of like, yeah, you did. You meant all that. And she kind of felt bad because it's like she's trying to make progress, but it's like, because the fact is he should never forget Miranda, but she wants him to move on, that maybe that will make him, like he'll finally be able to be happy and stuff like that. But it's just kind of like, I guess she kind of went about it the wrong way. Maybe, I don't know, maybe she went about it the right way. But that also put a strain on the relationship, plus the whole situation with the Murtaughs, because it's like, because she started bringing up something too, because he kind of notices her tics too. He's like, oh, that little smirk over there. She's like, what kind of smirk? Oh, that smirk when you kind of think you know something that I don't know. Is like, you're kind of going all therapist, psychologist on me when you do that, because it means you figure something out that you think you know better than I do. And it's like, she's like basically like, oh, maybe you wanted, subconsciously, you wanted to tell Trish. Like for him, he kept saying like, hey, I was under oath. I wouldn't like, what would you want me to do is lie. And even Roger kind of forgave him. He was like, you know what? He's like, he kind of understood what kind of position he was putting Riggs in. Plus he was like, the fact is Trish would have figured out anyway. That woman is very good at what she does, figuring stuff out, like pulling out the truth from people. So it wouldn't have mattered. They ended up finding out that Dino wasn't like the reason why the blood sample came close but it was corrupted, so it wasn't purified, because they ended up getting the DNA from Jerry because he ended up spitting on Cruz's shoe, because obviously they were lying and covering for each other. But it wasn't Dino that was doing bad stuff, it was Jerry. He's the one that messed up. He got the drug, like basically he stopped to get food or something and left the car parked in the wrong place. That's why it got taken. And then he tried to steal it back and lost it again. So the guy, Angelo, was super not happy. So he kidnapped Jerry, ended up forcing Dino to kind of work for him. It's like, Dino, get the drugs back, or give him his like $2 million back or whatever, to compensate for this. It's the only way he can, Dino can make this right and get Jerry back. And I love the situation where just like, I love Jerry kind of being introduced to like how crazy they are, because Riggs followed him and then Riggs has the gun to him and everything. And he's just like, okay, he's like, you should put that down. He's like, the fact is they have my brother. I have to do this. He's like, all right, well then I guess we have to go back and work together. So come on. And then like, he still has a gun pointed at him. And Jerry's just kind of like, wait, what? You see this gun I pointed at and you're just walking away like it's nothing? And then sitting in on a conversation where it's like, okay, Riggs and Roger are talking, like had Trish leave the room. It's like, no, this isn't about your client. This is for other reasons we're having you leave the room. Okay, so we steal those $2 million worth of drugs. We use that as a way to get Angelo's confession and stuff like that. And we turn them in. It's like, oh man, we are such an adorable couple. And it's just like, you see Jerry like, what the hell am I part of right here? I love the whole situation. And also how they had to get the drugs. They had to talk to a guy named Monty. And the situation with Monty, and I loved it, is that Monty basically had Roger as a training officer. And he's super pissed at Roger because he's like, yo, the fact of the matter is you basically gave the word that said I wasn't good enough to be a detective. He's like, I had to work my way up just to get to the job of like watching over evidence. I had to work up just to get to this job. He's like, screw you, Murtaugh. He's like, you want anything done? Oh, you want them drugs? Oh, I'm gonna work real slow at this. But then Riggs talks to him, talk about having Roger for a partner. He's like, you know what? We should get some drinks sometime, Riggs. I got some stories to tell. And he's like, oh, but could you help me out? Monty is like, sure thing, Riggs. I love it. So it's gonna be interesting. It makes you wonder what kind of stories Monty would tell Riggs about Roger. So, but at the end of it, they were finally able to. They ended up getting Dino to confess. Got Dino to get Angelo to confess about the whole drug situation, so they can finally bust him and everything. Poor Riggs, though, like that situation of just like obviously it was a desperate situation. He was handcuffed, obviously as part of the plan and everything. The car gets pushed into the water. I was like, oh man, how's he gonna get out of this? The key's down there. How is he supposed to get it? So he started I was halfway expecting him to do that, and I was scared. I was like, oh, please don't do it. I was like, maybe they won't make this sound because he's on the water. But I thought he was going to break his thumb, because that's usually how people in TV shows and stuff get out of handcuffs and slide his hand out like that. But he just kept pulling his hand, and he was cutting it because you could see blood coming up. And then lo and behold, what happens? He loses his ring. I'm like, dude. And he's there floating in the water. He's like trying to decide what to do. But he ends up leaving behind and goes up. And then I love it. Roger sees saw what happened. He comes running, jumps in the water just as Riggs comes up. He's like, Roger, Riggs, splash. And it's just like, oh, well, the fact is, you needed more exercise, right? And it's just like, you see him just go, I loved it, dude. Terrible timing. Kind of had to go back and explain to Avery about the whole situation. Avery's like, all right, the fact is we can look past it. Just basically go back through and cover yourself with the proper channels to make this look legit. So just make this look legit. That we got them under the right pretenses, and you didn't just steal evidence and then forged evidence, forge my signature just to get evidence out. To plan this whole unsanctioned thing. And the doc noticed that the fact is that he didn't have the ring, and he says something that I believe the doc didn't believe it too. She's like, oh, how did it make you feel? He's like, what do you mean? It's just metal, Doc. It doesn't mean anything. And then it's kind of like, you see the look on his face, kind of almost like you definitely believed he didn't really believe what he was saying. Like he felt uneasy. And you can tell the doc kind of didn't believe him either. But then you see at the end of it, it's super beautiful and at the same time so sad. Like the fact is, he bought a ring that looked just like his, and it's like, oh, don't worry, she'll forgive you. And like the shop owner is like, don't worry, you know, I like to believe love is forever. And Riggs is like, I couldn't agree more. And he puts on a ring, and you just see the smile on his face, like he feels complete again. And he puts the money on the table, and I guess the guy was actually kind of shocked because Riggs, I guess, paid for it up front, or maybe he paid a little more than what it was worth, and just walked away. So it, you know, even though it is like I think it hurt him just saying those words. Oh, it's just a piece of metal. So it's kind of sad that's like, I don't know, man. That just, I don't know, it breaks your heart, man, because it's like, because for him, like, it's not just it symbolizes everything. It symbolizes the love he has for Miranda. Like, if he loses that, I think for him, he feels like he'll lose every bit of Miranda. I mean, that's why he lives where he lives. I mean, remember, because that beach spot is like Miranda's favorite place. It was her favorite spot. It was her spot. That's why he chose to be there. And it's like, this is like, I guess he feels like this is the last thing he has to remember her. So it's just like, that's why he's so attached to it. He can't let it go, because if he lets it go, I guess he'll feel like he completely lost her all the way. At least he still has a piece of her with him in some shape or form. So by the end of it, obviously Roger's got his new pacemaker. Everything seems like it's good. So I don't know. The episode kind of ended on like I said, it's like a sweet but somber note. So overall, like, just overall very good episode. Like I said, I really appreciate seeing that side of Trish, and I do appreciate the fact that we have Trish versus Roger in this situation. Like, that it came down to that, because they are both part of the law system, but they can also be on different sides of the law depending on things. Because she is, just like I said, it was just very interesting to get to see that side of her. So, and now moving on to this week's episode of Blindspot. So obviously last week's episode set it up, so I kind of already knew it was happening. But the fact is, we had Roman, but not just Roman. I thought it was just going to be Roman, but it was Roman and Jane basically go undercover with this whole Viper King situation because of his connection to Kate. Because he ended up remembering something, because with just sitting there thinking and having that lady, the doctor, the one who examined him last episode, it was basically like, oh, if he remembers anything else, it could basically revert him back to his psychotic nature. And the fact of the matter is, like, she's trying to, like, basically get him remembering about the whole situation. And he remembers, it's like, oh, we were buying, like, Shepard wanted some explosives from the Viper Kings. It's like, oh man, it all worked. Like, you know, and it's just like, and you saw that look too. He looked to Jane, and Jane smiled at him like, oh, you did a good job. And he's like she's like, yeah, I helped out. Like, you know, just kind of that sibling thing of just kind of like, yeah, he felt like he had actually helped out. He had done good. And basically they're like, also, I love that little thing about Patterson too. Like, the fact is, at the beginning, it's like Jane is like, "Oh man, Roman helped figure out the tattoo," and then Patterson's like, "Well, he played a part in it," and it's just like, yeah, he figured out the whole thing, and then she's like, "Well, the fact of the matter is, my program, a program still had to be made to help figure that out," and then Kurt is like, Patterson, and just like, she wants credit due. Like, she worked hard on this too. She figured it out too. And speaking of Patterson, a very interesting thing too, it was like, because of this whole situation, it's like, okay, we're going to try and make a deal with Shepard. The whole plan is to use some explosives, because basically what turns out to be the case is they want to kind of set up a deal with the head of the Vipers, use Kate, his connection with Kate, to get to make it, have a meeting with Abel, the leader of the Viper Kings, and then have him make a deal with Shepard. That way they can go after her. Everyone at first was like super against it, like yeah, we do have. It's like, oh, but who would send on the cover? It's like, we have someone perfect for it, Roman. Everyone's like, ooh. Everyone just had that look on their face, like that's not a good idea. Especially his doctor being like, no. The fact is, you don't know what that would do to him, because he might be put out, and especially like in his state, like putting him out there might make things much worse. And then Jane's like, no, you don't know him, my brother. There's good in him. She's like, I get what you're trying to do. You want to see the best in your sibling, but the fact is, your sibling's really messed up. She's like, no, he can do this. It does make you wonder, was Kurt's decision also influenced, because that kind of comes up between him and Nas later on in the episode. Him and Nas are kind of like, hey, obviously they make mistakes throughout the episode, like him with Roman, because they need to do whatever it takes to kind of get close to Shepard and Sandstorm, and her like getting that explosives that they made the deal with. Like, she went along with that because it was Kurt's idea to say like, hey, once again, we have to do whatever it takes. And she feels like their relationship kind of influenced that. Like the reason why he was so okay with the Roman situation does make you wonder like, hey, maybe that was influenced by the fact is that what, because of his feelings for Jane and stuff like that. But going like, getting back to the point I was making earlier, I'm sorry, jumping all over the place. Patterson is like blaming, she's like, how could you not see it? It's like, because she felt bad about it herself, because Patterson's like, the fact is, do you know how I feel? Have you been in my exact situation? And then Nas is like, yeah, because I forgot, like, she's brought it up multiple times, like, the whole situation with, like, the person, like, she ended up finding out the person that was part of her team that was actually part of Sandstorm ended up killing, like, 3 agents or whatever. So it makes you wonder, like, because I can't remember if she said that or not, but, like, wasn't it that she actually... If she didn't actually say it, now you can obviously allude to the fact that she had a relationship with that person. So the same situation as Borden and Patterson. And it's kind of like, man, she didn't see it then and she kind of didn't see it now. But Patterson chews her out because it's like, you're supposed to be the one that sees this. You see all through the data and stuff like that. You were literally listening in on our conversations, but you were listening to the wrong side. It's like you were listening in, but you couldn't catch Borden. So basically all this is your fault essentially. And which you can't argue Patterson like, yo, you're supposed to be the one that behind all this. You know the most about Sandstorm, yet you didn't see this coming. And it's like, no, like, you couldn't really blame her. No one saw it coming. It's like, the fact is, y'all been working with Borden this entire time, and y'all didn't see it either. So, I mean, granted, they didn't see the whole Jane situation either, but, I mean, there were kind of 3 moles in the whole FBI situation, like, Borden being the third, and it's like, they didn't see either side, either 3 reveals coming that, like, oh, these are all moles. But then, on Patterson's side, more so than anything, you can get the feeling like she was just mad at herself. It was pointed at Nas because she needed someone to blame, because she also blamed herself for not seeing it. It's like she was close to him, the signs were there, and she just didn't want to see it because she cared too much about him. But anyway, you had Roman go undercover, and he ends up discovering, like, oh, there was more to him and Kate than just, like, partners. I had a feeling, but during that first memory, I was like, oh, maybe that's not the case. But I had the feeling, like, oh, he's going to find out that's the case, and it turns out that is the case. And I said that so many times, that him and Kate ended up having a relationship. But they basically had to break it off because Remy was like, no, you have to break it off. Shepard is saying you're getting too close. It's like, is this coming from Shepard or this coming from you? It's like, yes, I like her. Is there anything wrong with that? Because it comes down to a situation like growing up, Remy and Roman only had each other. And it's like, now that it had gotten to the point, they don't want to lose each other to someone else. It's like, she doesn't want to, like, it's like, yeah, for one, she wants Roman to stay focused on his mission, sure. But it's also because she doesn't want her brother taken away. Because there was a whole conversation between him and Kate in the past where it's like, Kate was like, hey, let's run away together. And then he's just kind of like, but my sister, she's like, your sister doesn't care about you. She only cares about herself. And then he was kind of thinking about it. So it does make you wonder, did Roman in the past actually, because that was kind of a conversation too, is like, did Roman actually love her? Because the fact is, it said that he doesn't have empathy, that he doesn't know what, what real love is. And even he questions it later on in the episode. He's like, because he's like, I told Kate what she needed to hear. Because Kate ended up figuring out the whole thing, because she's like, because 2 things told her. It's like, the fact is, when it came to shooting those 2, Kurt and Reed, because he did it like almost immediately, pow, pow, and you saw Jane's look of concern, but Roman didn't look like concerned at all. But he was like, I had to. He's like, I figured they were going to be wearing vests. I had to, because if I hesitated, they basically would have killed them after they had killed us, so. But the thing is that Kate's like, not Kate. I keep calling her Kate. I've been calling her Kate this entire time. I meant Kat. I'm sorry. Kat was like, no, the fact is, I had to ask you to do it. Old Roman would have done it without hesitation, without even me having to ask. And then also the fact is, you held my hand. It's like, Roman holding your hand was a sign that he's working with the FBI. It's like, he's changed. He's like, I told you he's different. Because the whole lie is that basically, this whole thing was like, hey, Shepard betrayed us. We want to turn on Shepard. It's like, set up this deal so we can take her down. Part of me was thinking like this whole setup, like, it's like, so you're working with the FBI. I was thinking like what was going to happen is like the real motive for setting that up is I thought she was going to try and kill Remy, because Remy's always been the bridge between her and Roman and kind of getting in the way, because this is the first time actually ever meeting face to face. So, But there were like moments where you kind of, it does question like whether Roman really did love her or not. And he brought it up himself because like multiple times when she said, I love you, he never actually said, I love you back. So maybe it's because he's just never used to saying those words. I mean, which isn't, you can't argue. It's like, maybe he's actually said those words to her, but he was like, no, like he was trying to convince her later on, but he's like, I told her what she wanted to hear. It's like, do you ever think I really loved her? And Remy's like, oh, Jane's like, I think you did. Because she brings up the fact is that Remy, she did a lot of bad stuff in the past. When he tells her about the fact is that, like, yeah, me and her, we wanted to run away. And it's like, but you're the one that kind of told me to back down because we're getting so close. And she's like, I'm not surprised. The fact is, I did a lot of bad stuff back in the day because of that. Because of who I was back then. And she's like, I'm not proud of that. Because something that also came up was Kurt kind of warned Jane. He's like, so I need you to be careful. It's like, no, everything's going to be okay. Don't worry. Roman's got, she's like, no, I want you to be careful of Roman. The fact of the matter is, she's like, but the fact is he loved this, even this Catwoman, you can tell that he loved her. But it's like, or he could have been, manipulating her, saying he loved her, but not really, just using her. Because it's like, you were both raised by Shepard in the art of deception. It's like, look at us. We cared about you and everything. You got close to me. You fit this role of like, oh, you played out this whole situation being Taylor. And so it's like, you can't argue. You see your situation with like being deceptive. So it's like Roman was kind of raised to be the same way. So it's like, you can't trust him. Don't let him be, play you. Because basically Kurt is like, you played us and you saw what, like we kind of gotten back to the point that we're okay and everything, but don't forget like how I felt when I found out the truth about you. You had the whole situation with, because it does make you wonder, it's like, oh, was that going to turn out to be a thing? Like, because it's a sad but concerning thing. Like, what if that is the case? What if Roman really can't love anyone? I mean, it does legitimately seem like he cares about Jane / Remy, but it seems like that she might be the only person that he does care about. But Jane does still wholeheartedly believe in him. There were moments you kind of wonder, like, does she still believe him? Does she not? Because like when he was back in the States, he's like, you do still trust me, right? And she's like, yeah. So. But I kind of trailed off from it earlier, the whole Nas and Kurt situation. The fact is that they broke up, and when they broke up, it's just like, obviously for like, they're not at their fullest, they're letting the relationship kind of get in the way. And what ends up happening is like, that breakup was so professional. That's what makes it so sad. It's like, so I guess we're done. Yep, I guess we're done. Well, I'll see you tomorrow. Yes, you will. And it's like, dude, that was such like a bam, bam, it's over type of situation. Like, I guess it's because they have the brain, like they're in a situation where with things being the way they are, with dealing with Sandstorm, the fact that Sandstorm has these explosives. Granted, because of the whole deal, they only had a little bit of the explosives, so they didn't really have the full amount of explosives that they would have needed for this plan. But the fact is that, like they have Sandstorm on the brain, so they have to compartmentalize, but also with their jobs, they have to compartmentalize, which isn't to say Kurt's always been, the most professional about his job with his relationships and stuff with everything, especially when it came to Jane, wasn't the most professional. Situation with Nas, not the most professional. So it does beg up the question of like, is this them trying to be professional, or was it just the realization that maybe I don't know. I think they cared about each other, but at the same time, let's not forget, I want Jane and Kurt, so I'm okay with it. It's like, I'm looking for any excuse, but like I said, them breaking up like that, it felt weird. It didn't feel like there was much heart behind it. It just kind of was like, I guess we're done, and just leaving it at that. But maybe we really didn't give them a chance to really kind of deal with that. Because Kurt's also been dealing with the whole episode, the fact is about the whole Allie situation, which it don't seem like he ever told Nas that. He told Jane, but not Nas. So, I mean, to our knowledge, he didn't tell her. So that does beg up the question of like, about Allie moving to Colorado, getting a new job. And she's like, oh, does that mean? He's like, no, I'm staying behind. But he's like, but I set up this whole baby crib and baby room for a baby, the baby's not even really going to be there, because the child's going to grow up mostly in Colorado with Allie, probably see him every once in a while, sure, but still. And that he felt stupid about it, and Jane's kind of trying to talk to him, which she talks to him later on in the episode about it, so. But there was a situation, I'm jumping around, the situation with Kat, like her. Like, I was thinking, like, oh, man, we're going to have a situation, like, because everything happened, like, she faked killing Roman and Jane, because Roman kind of revealed everything. He's like, the fact is that, this is all me getting back to you, obviously saying what she wanted to hear. She kind of sided with them, killed some of the dudes in the bar, ended up getting shot and dying. Once again, she said, I love you, Roman. And he was actually looking sad, but then he immediately was like, okay, we got the address, and handed the gun to Kurt. So it's kind of like, okay, so maybe it's hard to say whether he does or not. Like, but it did seem like it did affect him. Like the blood was on his hands and stuff. But it could be he was reacting to like, the blood is on my hands and I don't feel anything. You know, like I lied to her. Like she actually cared about me. Did I ever care about her? So, and then also Roman says like, we're going to capture Shepard alive. It's like, if she'll let us. It's like, we have to. I need to figure out why she did this to me. And you see Jane looking up at the mirror, staring at Kurt, who's looking back at her. It's like, dude! Like I said, because Jane does have to be careful, like, because she got some of her most recent memories before her memory got wiped. Like, memories before her memory got wiped back. So who's to say Roman won't do the same thing? Like, she has to be careful about that. But it turns out, obviously, they got the explosives because they basically killed the Viper Kings, like Abel and the guys that were with him. The question is whether it was because they knew it was a trap, or were they just, like, they actually had to, because why would they get rid of, like, a source like that? Because it kind of ties into what I'm pointing out, the whole Borden thing. Like, Borden's, like, talking to that guy, I think his name is Parker, and he's like, yo, the fact is, I'm making changes to the plan. What's wrong with the original plan? It's like, Shepard told me about you. You're a good soldier. It's like, you have to kind of respect my authority. I was gone. I get it. You know, things have changed. Now I'm back. So adapt. And so that must mean that Borden kind of had a higher position already. It's like, what kind of position did he have? Obviously, he wasn't as high as Roman, but he's probably up there. Maybe it makes you wonder, maybe he's at Roman, where Roman was, because he is part of the inner circle and everything. Because the question is, how did Shepard and them know that this was a trap? I'm thinking Borden, but it's like, maybe Borden has access, because like, it's like, oh, maybe the place is bugged, and then like Patterson's like, no, I sweep the place like every day now because of everything that's come out. And it's like, I think Borden has to be the part of that, because he's the one that changed the plan. So maybe that's what that was. Maybe those were some of the changes. But it's like, also the fact is that Borden's coming in pushing his weight too. We're kind of seeing him taking like a leader role. He's like, the fact is that this is how things are going to be. And he's like, you want to watch this city, you want to watch America burn, right, Parker? Like, that's why you're so dedicated. And he's like, don't worry, you'll get that wish soon enough. So it's kind of like, I don't know, I'm still thinking like Borden just might be the inside source for Sandstorm, but it's like, I don't know. Or it seems like he wholeheartedly believes, but there's a part of me that just looks at him thinking like, no, there's something more to Borden than all of this. I get the feeling like when it's all said and done, it's going to get revealed that he is actually a good guy, but he is going to die, and just that's going to hit Patterson hard, because it's like, oh, he was a good guy this entire time, and so she ended up losing someone else that she cared about. It also makes you wonder, does Nas know that more than she's letting on? She says like, oh, she let her feelings influence the whole situation with Kurt, but maybe there was something else that kind of influenced that. Maybe she ended up finding out who got back in contact. Maybe Borden revealed himself or something. I don't know. Like, it's hard to say where it's hard to say where Shepard's real plan is. Also, because the thing at the end of the episode where like we see a picture of Kurt from his younger days, because Jane came over and she's like, wait, Kurt, look at this person. He's like, that's Shepard. He's like, I remember her. And he's like, wait, what? Bam, ends it. And it's like, dude, come on, man. Because this is the first time he's ever seen Shepard's face. Was it that he saw... No, because he'd seen Shepard's face before, right? I can't remember. But nevertheless, it's just like, what is it? Why is it that he remembers her? Like, next episode, they kind of started it up in the previews. They're like, yo, we find out why Kurt knows her. It's like, I had to look away. I was like, no, I don't want to get spoiled. I'm going to find out when the episode comes up. Obviously, I'm going to end up getting spoiled, because obviously I'm going to end up watching something else, and then the preview for the next episode is going to come up. So that's usually what happens with these type of situations. So I'm going to try and avoid it as much as possible. But I'm curious to find, what is their connection? Like, what is going to go down? What is phase 2 of Sandstorm's plan? Just like, what does Roman and Jane's future hold for them? Because it's like, because when it's all said and done, I hope it doesn't come down to it, but it will come down to it eventually. If Roman and Shepard ever meet for whatever reason, Shepard's going to let it out like, oh, I didn't wipe your memory. Your sister did it. Like, your sister she'll try and manipulate him. Like, no, your sister turned you against me. None of that happened. Or maybe she'll admit, yeah, I shot you. Or maybe she'll like, no, the person that really shot you was your sister. She's playing you, Roman, type of thing. And I think that's what it's going to come down to. It's like, if he remembers, it's going to change everything. It's like, even if Jane tries to explain, like, I wanted to give you a second chance, that might not be enough. I hope on everything that Jane gets that dream she had of having both Kurt as well as having her brother, having a family. But at the same time, it does beg the question, like, hey, maybe that's not can remember what happened. Remy came into the room in a dream and kind of, it turned into a fight. It's like, oh, this is my life. So basically, you could look at that as being like foreshadowing to like say, hey, everything's not going to work out the way you want it to. Maybe Remy's supposed to represent Sandstorm coming in and ruining everything. Not just like, obviously it meant something then, but also it could mean something now. Obviously it meant then kind of her struggling with her identity of being like, okay, Remy was who I was then. Like, Jane is who I am now. I don't ever want to be Remy again type of situation. But now it could also be, you could also interpret that dream as being like, hey, Sandstorm, her past, is coming there to kind of screw with her good life, things being good. And also another thing that happened in this episode is Freddy's girlfriend popped up looking for Freddy. Tasha, it's like, yo, let that go. But, Reed is kind of like, he feels bad about it. It's like, she doesn't know about the whole situation. It's like, she thinks it's her fault and I don't want her to think that. But like, Tasha's like, yo, back away from it. Like, it's not your problem. Freddie made his choices. You can't do anything about it now. You can't change it. So don't get involved with her. But what do we see? Lo and behold, like, it started heading down that route later in the episode. I was like, nah, don't do it, Reed. Don't. Oh, you did it. And I said don't for multiple reasons. One, you're hooking up with Freddie's girl. You know exactly where Freddie is. Obviously, you lied to her about the whole situation, but it's like, why hook up with her? Like, because I think it's a little suspicious that she happens to pop up around this time. Maybe there's somebody that knows about Freddie's situation and is using her to try and get close to Reed to find out what it is with Freddie. Or maybe, obviously, she's just a caring girlfriend that's like, she wanted to make things right. She kicked him out and everything because she knew he was using again, had a feeling he was using again. But also because, like, Tasha is so obviously into you, but she just doesn't want to admit it because she doesn't want to mess up that relationship that you have. You're her best friend, and she doesn't want to jeopardize that. Because she even asked at the beginning of it, oh, so what happened with the lady at the bar? He's like, yo, oh, so you don't even know her name, like, playing along. But it's like, that bothers you. And it's like, if this comes out, it's going to bother her even more. I don't want, once it's literally a repeat of this, like, Kurt situation. It's like, I didn't want you with Allie, I wanted you with Jay. It's like, hey, you and Jane were getting close. Oh, you found out the truth about her. Now it's you and Nas. It's like, you and Nas are broken up, at least for you and Jane to be a thing. And it's like, oh, Reed and Sarah broke up, which, at that time I never even thought about. But then things started happening. It's like, maybe you and Tasha. And then it happens a little bit, and it's like, oh, she backs away. You kind of apologize for it. Everything is good. You go back to being friends, but you see this feeling on her, look on her face last episode. Now it's like, I want couples to be together, all right? I want me some Tasha and Reed, and I want me some Kurt and Jane. That's the way it has to be, and I want it that way. So I'm very curious to see how that plays out. I feel like there's so much more to that, because that's just going to complicate things, especially if Freddie ends up finding out about it. I feel like Freddie's not going to come back supposedly, but it's like, they keep pushing that to say like, hey, you can never come back. It's like he might come back for his girl, and he comes back to find out, yo, you helped me out in the whole situation. I appreciate that. But the moment my back is turned, you're trying to steal my girl type of situation. So I don't want it to turn into that type of situation, because you don't know what Freddie might do. Freddie might reveal like, yo, Reed helped me run away. So he was there when I killed Joan. So it's like bringing up a whole world of hurt for him. And like I said, but main reason is you're jeopardizing your possible future relationship with Tasha, but it's also because he doesn't think there'll be a future between him and Tasha, because they're just going to be friends. So, a very good episode. I'm very interested to see how things play out next time. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.